Ladies and gentlemen, let me tell you something today. Sometimes in life, God gives you the strength to walk away quietly, and that right there, that ain't weakness. That's growth. That's power. That's you saying, you know what? I forgive you, but I love myself more. You see, folks think forgiveness always ends with a hug, a conversation, or a reunion. No, sometimes it ends with distance, and that's okay. You don't want anybody access to your peace just because you let go of the pain. So today I'm talking about the kind of forgiveness that don't come with a phone call, the kind where you don't text back, the kind where you silently forgive him and never talk to him again. That ain't petty. That's purpose. Let's get into it. Forgiveness is for peace, not permission. That's a truth we don't hear enough. We've been taught all our lives that forgiveness is about making things right with other people, that it's about restoring relationships or giving someone another chance. But let me tell you something. Real forgiveness isn't about them. It's not about their guilt, their apology, or their understanding of what they did. Forgiveness, true forgiveness, is about you choosing peace over pain. It's about letting go so you don't carry the weight of what broke you. When someone hurts you, really hurts you, it doesn't just leave a mark on your heart, it rents space in your mind. You wake up thinking about it. You go to sleep replaying it. You carry it into your conversations, into your silence, into your confidence, and into your trust. That pain takes root and starts growing bitterness. And here's the thing, bitterness don't hurt the person who wronged you. It hurts you. It eats away your joy, your energy, your ability to move forward. So forgiveness in its most powerful form is the decision to release yourself from that grip. It's saying, I refuse to let this thing define my future. Now, a lot of people think if you forgive someone, it means you're okay with what they did, that you're giving them a pass, a permission slip, or a free ride back into your life. But that's not what forgiveness is. Forgiveness ain't an invitation. It's a declaration. You're not saying, I trust you again. You're saying, I choose to free myself from the poison of resentment. Forgiveness is like putting down a heavy bag you've been dragging through every room in your life. At some point, you get tired of carrying it. You realize that the person you're holding on to that pain for, they're not losing sleep over it. They might be living their life smiling in pictures, moving on while you're still stuck in a moment they don't even think about. That's the moment you take your power back. Not by talking it out, not by texting them, not by reopening wounds, but by quietly choosing peace. And peace don't always look like reconciliation. Sometimes peace is distance. Sometimes peace is silence. Sometimes peace is blocking the number and deleting the thread. Because you can forgive a person and still understand they don't belong in your life. That's not being bitter. That's being wise. You don't keep opening the door to people who bring chaos. You forgive them and then you shut that door and lock it. You see, we've confused forgiveness with weakness. We've made people feel guilty for not wanting to keep toxic relationships alive. But forgiveness doesn't mean you let someone keep hurting you. It means you've decided not to let them keep hurting you in your head. You let go of the anger so you can move in freedom. That's not permission for them to do it again. That's permission for yourself to finally live without carrying their baggage. You don't need to make an announcement. You don't need to tell them you forgave them. You don't need to justify your silence. Forgiveness doesn't always come with a conversation. Sometimes the most powerful forgiveness is quiet. It's private. It's just you, your soul, and your decision to no longer be a prisoner to something that already happened. And listen, don't let anyone shame you into keeping people in your life just because you forgave them. Forgiveness is not a revolving door. It's not an invitation for more pain. It's a boundary. A moment when you say, this ends with me. Because if you keep allowing the same pain to re-enter your life under disguise of forgiveness, you're not healing. You're just reliving the same cycle. Closure doesn't require conversation. That's a lesson life teaches you the hard way. We grow up with this idea that every emotional wound needs a final talk, a moment of clarity, or some kind of last word exchange where everything gets wrapped up neat and clean. But real life doesn't work like that. People walk away without explanations. They ghost, they lie, they betray, and sometimes they never give you the moment you think you need to move on. And yet you still can. You still must. Because closure is not something they give you. It's something you create for yourself. A lot of folks get stuck waiting on conversations that will never happen. They rehearse what they would say, how they would say it, how they hope the other person would respond. They run those imaginary scenes like a movie on repeat, thinking maybe one day it'll happen just like that. But let me tell you, the people who hurt you aren't always capable of giving you honesty, accountability, or understanding. Some don't even see what they did wrong. Others know exactly what they did and just don't care, waiting for them to suddenly grow up or get a conscience. That's a trap. You'll end up holding your healing hostage to someone else's timeline. You don't need a conversation to find peace. You don't need their explanation to validate your feelings. If someone disrespected you, betrayed your trust, or took advantage of your kindness, you already have all the information you need. Their actions were the conversation. What they chose to do or not do spoke loud and clear. And the more time you spend trying to get them to say something they may never say, the more you delay your own recovery. Because healing doesn't come from them understanding your pain. Healing comes from you understanding your worth. And sometimes deep down, we're not looking for closure. We're looking for connection. We want to feel seen, heard, and maybe even missed. We think if we talk it out, we might spark something. We might change their mind. We might get the apology we deserve or the love we didn't receive. But that's dangerous because it puts your power in their hands. It keeps your heart tied to someone who's already shown you they don't value it the way you do. Closure that relies on another person's cooperation is just emotional gambling. You keep playing, hoping this time it'll turn out different. But the house always wins. You can sit across from someone and pour out every emotion you've been carrying and still walk away feeling empty. You can tell them how much they hurt you, and they might shrug, deny it, or even blame you. Not everybody has the capacity to meet you in that vulnerable space. Not everyone is mature enough to own their impact. So instead of chasing words that may never heal you, start building your own closure out of truth. The truth of what happened, the truth of who they were, the truth of what you need and what you deserve. Closure isn't about getting them to agree with your version of events. It's about being honest with yourself. It's about accepting that things ended the way they did, not the way you hoped. It's about deciding that you're done giving your time, your tears, your energy to someone who didn't protect your heart when they had it. And yes, it's painful, it's frustrating, but it's also freeing. Because once you realize you don't need anyone's permission to move forward, you start to take back control. Sometimes silence is your closure. Sometimes the unanswered message, the cold shoulder, the vanishing act, they become the clearest sign of who that person really is. You don't need to respond, but you don't need to chase. You just need to recognize that their absence is confirmation, that their silence is its own kind of message. You wanted a conversation. Life gave you a conclusion. Closure happens when you stop trying to make sense of someone else's chaos. It happens when you stop giving people the power to validate your story. You get to decide what the ending means. You get to decide what you carry forward and what you leave behind. And once you do that, you start to realize you never really needed that conversation in the first place. Distance can be an act of self-respect. It's not always about dislike, drama, or cutting someone off out of spite. Sometimes it's about understanding that your peace, your mental clarity, and your emotional well-being come first. Creating space from someone doesn't make you cruel or cold. It makes you conscious. Conscious of your energy, conscious of your needs, and conscious of what environment you no longer want to keep yourself in. There are people in your life who may never physically harm you, but emotionally, mentally, they exhaust you. They drain you with inconsistency, with manipulation, with guilt. Give me a sign. They always have a way of making it about them, of rewriting history, of acting like they didn't do what they did. And each time you try to give them the benefit of the doubt, each time you let them back and thinking maybe this time will be different, they show you exactly why you needed to walk away in the first place. That cycle of hope and hurt is not love. That's emotional chaos, and you're not obligated to keep entertaining it just because you care. People love to throw around the word loyalty like it means keeping toxic people in your life forever. But real loyalty starts with being loyal to yourself. If you're constantly choosing someone else's comfort over your own sanity, you're not loyal. You're lost in them. Distance is not betrayal. Distance is the boundary you put in place when your heart has been pushed past its limit. It's how you reclaim the space that someone else has been abusing, whether they realize it or not. Some people only value you when you're available to them, when you're answering the call, fixing the mess, listening to the excuse, giving chance after chance. They're used to your presence being a guarantee. And when you pull away, when you stop ansplaining, stop explaining, stop showing up for the same story with a different title, they might act confused. They might call you selfish. But protecting your peace isn't selfish. It's survival. It's choosing to stop bleeding for people who wouldn't even hand you a bandage. We all have thresholds, points where we realize that something has to change. It's that moment you sit in your own silence and realize how tired you are, not physically, but spiritually. Tired of being misunderstood, tired of being taken for granted, tired of repeating lessons you already learned. That's when distance becomes a decision, a powerful, quiet decision that doesn't always need to be explained. Because when you've truly outgrown someone's energy, the loudest thing you can do is remove yourself from it. Distance isn't always about cutting ties with hate in your heart. Sometimes it's actually about love. Love for yourself, love for the person you're becoming. And believe it or not, love for them too, in a different way. A love that understands you can't help someone by drowning with them. Sometimes the best thing you can do for a relationship is step away from it. Let it breathe. Let the silence speak where words never could. Because in that space, truths rise. Real intentions surface. And you finally see what you couldn't see when you were too close to the pain. Choosing distance doesn't mean you didn't care. It means you cared too much for too long. And now you're choosing to care for yourself. It means you're done watering dead plants, done re-explaining your worth, done hoping someone sees your value when they've made it clear they don't. That's not giving up. That's growing up. That's knowing when something has run its course, even if it once meant everything to you. People may not understand your decision. They may judge your silence, twist your story, or act like you never gave enough. But deep down, you'll know. You'll know how much you tolerated, how long you held on, how deeply you loved. And you'll also know how much it costs. There's a price to staying connected to pain, and sooner or later, you either pay it with your peace or you walk away and invest in your healing. So when you choose distance, you're not being cruel. You're being clear. You're letting go of what weighs you down, not out of anger, but out of alignment. Get it? Because peace isn't something you find in other people. It's something you protect within yourself. Healing starts where access ends. That's a truth most people only learn after being broken one too many times by the same person. As long as you keep the door open to the person who hurt you, even if it's just slightly cracked, healing becomes something you postpone. It becomes a maybe, a someday, a hope that's always being held hostage by the possibility of their return. But real healing begins when you cut the cords. When you stop checking for them, stop responding, stop hoping they'll become who you needed them to be. It starts when you finally shut that door and lock it from the inside. Access is a privilege, not a right. Just because someone shared a past with you doesn't mean they deserve a future with you. Just because someone says they're sorry doesn't mean they've changed. You can't keep reopening yourself to people who only know how to take. Healing means protecting your space like it's sacred, because it is. Your peace, your growth, your emotional balance, they are all too valuable to gamble on someone who's proven they can't handle your heart with care. People talk about moving on like it's just a mindset shift, but healing isn't just about thinking differently. It's about living differently. It's about changing what you allow. You can't grow in the same soil that keeps poisoning your roots. If every time you start to feel okay, that person calls, texts, or shows up and suddenly you're pulled back into confusion, then you're not healing. You're just surviving between disruptions, and you deserve more than survival. You deserve steady. You deserve whole. Access means influence. When you allow someone to stay close, you give them the ability to affect your mood, your thoughts, your confidence. If someone's presence causes more pain than peace, more doubt than clarity, more insecurity than comfort, then access becomes a form of self-sabotage. And it's not always easy to admit that, especially when you love them or when you shared something real. But love isn't supposed to hurt this way. Respect isn't supposed to feel like a negotiation. And healing isn't supposed to be interrupted every time they decide to come back around. Sometimes the kindest thing you can do for yourself is distance yourself completely, not out of anger, not out of revenge, but out of necessity. Because even if they say all the right things, actions tell the real story. And if their presence in your life keeps you stuck, unsure, or spiraling, then the most loving thing you can do is remove the access that allows them to keep causing harm. Healing starts when you finally put yourself first, not out of selfishness, but out of survival. We give people too many chances because we're scared of what life looks like without them. We're scared of being alone, of letting go, of starting over. But what's scary is staying in a space that keeps re-breaking you. Healing is painful, yes, but it's a different kind of pain. It's the kind of pain that eventually leads to strength, to clarity, to self-respect. The pain of letting go doesn't last forever, but the pain of holding on might. Removing access doesn't mean you didn't love them. It doesn't mean the memories weren't real. It just means you've chosen to stop bleeding for someone who keeps handing you the knife. It means you've looked at the pattern and decided you deserve better than what keeps repeating. Healing is a decision. And that decision starts when you stop giving people front row seats to your life who only show up to cause chaos. Boundaries aren't cruel. They are necessary. They are the lines you draw to protect your progress. Without them, even the strongest heart will end up tired, bitter, or numb. You can forgive someone and still recognize they can't walk with you anymore. Forgiveness doesn't require access. Closure doesn't require access. Growth definitely doesn't require access. In fact, growth often demands disconnection from people, places, and patterns that keep pulling you backward. You don't need to explain your distance. You don't need to feel guilty for choosing yourself. The people who truly value you will understand. Stop reopening your heart to people who only show up to remind you why it's broken. Letting go doesn't mean letting back in. There's a huge difference between releasing someone from your heart and welcoming them back into your life. Too often, people think forgiveness is a reset button. Like once you've moved past the pain, you're obligated to give the person another chance. But healing doesn't always come with reconciliation. Sometimes healing means making peace with what happened while keeping your distance from the person who caused it. You can let go of the anger, the resentment, the weight of what they did, and still know deep in your spirit that they don't belong in your future. Letting go is about freedom. Freedom from the emotional hold someone had on you. Freedom from the story you kept retelling in your head. It's choosing not to be bitter, not to carry hate, not to replay the hurt over and over again. But none of that means you're obligated to keep the door open. People will test your growth. They'll come back around once they sense your energy has shifted. Once they see that you're no longer broken, no longer desperate, no longer emotionally dependent on them, they'll try to return. Sometimes with apologies, sometimes with charm, sometimes with promises of change. But growth requires discernment. You have to be able to recognize the difference between genuine change and familiar manipulation. Letting go means you've already outgrown that chapter. Letting back in often just reopens the pain you worked so hard to heal from. Not everyone who says they've changed actually has. Some people just miss the access they once had to your life. They miss the comfort, the attention, the security of knowing you were always there. But your healing journey isn't a revolving door. It's a sacred space that you protect with the wisdom you gain from the hurt. You can wish someone well, pray for their happiness, genuinely hope they become better, and still know that their path no longer aligns with yours. You didn't go through everything you went through just to end up in the same place with the same pain dressed in a new outfit. You let go because it hurt too much to hold on. You cried, you questioned, you broke down more times than you could count, but you kept moving. And that movement, slow, painful, imperfect, is what allowed you to grow. Letting back in, especially too soon, can undo all that progress. It can reopen wounds that were finally starting to close. It can reawaken doubt, fear, and insecurity you fought hard to silence. People don't always realize the strength it takes to let go. It's not weakness. It's not avoidance. It's a powerful decision to honor yourself. And once you've made that decision, protecting it is part of your healing. You don't need to explain why you're not answering. You don't owe anyone a chance just because time has passed. Time doesn't heal all wounds. Effort does. Consistency does. And even when those things are present, it still doesn't mean you're required to reopen a relationship that cost you your peace. Letting go is about release, not return. It's closing the emotional loop. It's saying, this no longer controls me. It's taking the lessons and leaving the pain. But letting back in, that's access. That's influence. That's power. And if someone has already shown you that they misuse those things, it's your responsibility to remember, not to hold a grudge, but to honor your growth, to remember what it took to rebuild yourself after they left you in pieces. There's a version of you that existed before the pain, and there's a version of you that emerged after. The second version is wiser, more grounded, more protective of your energy. That version doesn't make decisions based on emotion alone. It understands the cost of repeating cycles. Letting back in has to be earned, not given out of guilt, nostalgia, or pressure. You've come too far to hand your healing over to someone who didn't protect it the first time. You can let someone go with grace. You can detach with dignity. You can move on with peace in your heart. But that doesn't mean you have to reopen what was closed. You're not cold. You're not heartless. You're just clear. Clear about what you deserve. Clear about what broke you. Clear about what you need to protect going forward. Forgiveness is not for them. It's for you. That's one of the hardest lessons to accept when you've been hurt deeply. We grow up thinking that forgiving someone means they win, like it's some kind of gift you hand over to the person who broke you. But real forgiveness has nothing to do with letting them off the hook. It has everything to do with freeing yourself from the weight of what they did. Carrying resentment is like holding on to hot coals. You're the one getting burned, not them. You think you're protecting yourself by staying angry, but all you're really doing is prolonging your own pain. There's something powerful about deciding you're no longer going to let what someone else did define your days. You might not get an apology. You might never get the truth. They may never admit they were wrong. But if you keep waiting on that apology to start healing, you're letting them live rent-free in your mind. Forgiveness is when you say, I'm done letting this own me. It's not about saying what they did was okay. It's about saying, I'm not going to let this wound control me anymore. When someone wrongs you, especially if they were close to you, someone you trusted, the pain isn't just about the action. It's about the betrayal, the loss, the disbelief that someone you care for could hurt you. That way, that pain starts to settle in your chest. And if you're not careful, it grows roots. It starts affecting how you see other people, how you see yourself. You stop trusting. You carry that energy into every new situation. Fritz, that's what unforgiveness does. It doesn't just stay in the past, it leaks into your future. Forgiveness isn't soft. It isn't weakness. It's one of the boldest, strongest things you can do because it means you're choosing peace over power. It means you're choosing growth over revenge. It means you're taking responsibility for your healing, even when someone else is responsible for the hurt. That takes courage. That takes maturity. That takes a kind of emotional strength that doesn't come easy, but it's worth it because you don't deserve to keep reliving what they did every time you hear their name or remember the story. It's not about forgetting. It's about releasing. You're not erasing the memory. You're not pretending it didn't happen. You're just choosing not to let that memory continue to poison your present. When you forgive, you create space for joy, for clarity, for peace. You stop being reactive. You stop carrying that tension. You breathe easier. Your heart softens, not for them, but for you, because you deserve softness. You deserve a life that isn't built around protecting yourself from ghosts. And yes, forgiveness can happen quietly. You don't have to call them. You don't have to announce it. You don't have to include them in the process. Forgiveness can be a decision you make in the stillness of your own mind. I release this. I release you. I choose peace. You can forgive them and never speak to them again. That's not being bitter. That's being clear. Clear about who belongs in your life and who doesn't. Clear about the difference between healing and reconnection. Some people will never acknowledge what they did. Some people will act like they did nothing wrong. They'll rewrite the story, play the victim, shift the blame. But your forgiveness isn't for them, it's for your own freedom. It's so you don't become hard, angry, closed off. It's so you can love again, trust again, dream again. When you don't forgive, you keep your life stuck in that moment of betrayal. When you do, you start moving again. It might take time. It might not happen all at once. You might think you've let go, only to feel the weight creep back up when you see something that reminds you. That's normal. Forgiveness isn't a one-time event. It's a process. Some days you'll feel strong. Other days it'll feel like the wound is fresh again. But every time you choose to let go a little more, Every time you choose not to replay the pain, not to reopen the argument, not to seek revenge, you're healing. Forgiveness is not about making peace with the person. It's about making peace with the pain. It's about saying, this hurt me, but it no longer controls me. It's about reclaiming your power, your energy, your time. It's the quiet revolution of saying, I deserve peace, and I choose it, even if you never deserved my forgiveness in the first place.